Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, world. Welcome once again to Tuesday Talk with Key West Lou. I am your host, Louis Patrone. Well, I got to tell you, Syracuse basketball is back. I'm missing the last minute of the game here tonight. We're playing St. Bonaventure. We did not look good until the second half of the second half. Fortunately, we shot 59% in the second half, and we're going to beat St. Bonnie's by 9 or 10 points, which is not a lot against a school like St. Bonaventure. But I've got to say this, St. Bonaventure has an excellent team and should do well in their league. Syracuse, I don't know how we're going to do in the ACC yet. We look good and we look bad. We generally look bad until the last 3 or 4 minutes, in my opinion. It's going to be an interesting season. Wanted to share it with you. You will hear it from me every time I speak with you during the course of the season. Now, this has been a crazy week. Things are terrible all over the world. I don't have to tell you. I get concerned. I'm sure most of you get concerned also. I'm going to start tonight with the Paris situation, which is of concern to all of us. And it's a situation that Paris has taken extremely serious, the French government. It is their 9/11, okay? It is their 9/11. Well, let me say this. It is said that this is ISIS, and they're sure it's ISIS, and over 100 people were killed, and I don't know how many were injured. But there's another cause for this. And you see, it was thought, I'm sorry, let me bring it together. I'm still back into the Syracuse game. I apologize. It was thought that ISIS attacked Paris in retaliation for the French bombing and having planes over there in Syria and so forth, and bombing ISIS. Could be another reason. The Times of Israel, one of the largest Israeli papers, said yesterday, okay, that they thought there was a Jewish situation involved in this also. I know they're always saying there's a Jewish situation. Let me share with you what they had to say, though. And if they're correct, then the assumption that it's because France was over in Syria with their planes may not be correct, or maybe the Jewish thing and the situation over in Syria. The place where the explosion, the shootings, whatever you want to call it, occurred is called Bataclan. That's the name of the facility in Paris, Bataclan. This was owned by a Jewish family for 40 years, a very pro-Israel family. They threw many pro-Israel events. The anti-Zionists were very, very upset with them all the time. In 2011, only 4 years ago, ISIS, a very high member of ISIS, said, and I quote, "We plan an attack against the Bataclan because its owners are Jewish." Well, the club was sold in September. The family, this Jewish family, sold the club, and they all moved to Israel in September, okay? So none of them are in Paris right now. The group that was playing that night when the ISIS went in there were the Eagles of Death Metal. Just so happened that the Eagles played in Tel Aviv this past July at the Barbie Club. Is there a connection? Is there a Jewish connection here? I don't know. I'm just sharing with you what Israel believes. Moving on now. I want to talk about President Obama for a moment. I am unhappy with my president. And perhaps many of you are, maybe you're not. I voted for him twice, but I think he has not done a very good job in his second term. The last 2 years, I think, with all due respect, suck. That's all. It's the only way to put it. Yesterday he spoke regarding ISIS on TV. The whole world's seen it by now. He was tentative. He was argumentative, and I think he was wrong in the way he was saying things. He doesn't want to. He says, look, we're going to go the way we are. We're not sending any more troops over. We're not changing our plans. We know what we're doing. I got the best military telling me what to do, and in effect, I'm sick and tired of people saying we've got to do more. And I think we've got to do more, by the way. But the way he talks reminded me of Germany in the late 1930s. Everyone hoped the problem would go away. Germany would cease and desist. They would be satisfied with the lands they had grabbed. Roosevelt, the president at the time, he did not want to go to war. Pope Pius XII did not want to go to war, and during the war, he supported Hitler. And of course, Hitler never damaged or bombed the Vatican, did not bother the church in Germany. Hitler, unfortunately, my Pope, I'm a Catholic, Pius XII, has become known in history as Hitler's Pope. There was a time also he could have done something with regard to the Jewish situation, the final solution, and he failed to do so. Now, I know we're sick of wars in this country. Bush brought us into 2 wars, and when Obama ran first, he said, no more wars, I'm going to get us out of wars. That was 6 years ago. Things have changed. Things have changed dramatically. There was no ISIS 6 years ago. There was Al-Qaeda. Now there's ISIS that's bigger, more powerful, more rotten, more despicable than Al-Qaeda ever thought of being. A recent study said 80% of the American people say if we must go to war, we must go to war. I don't know why the president's so adamant. It sounds like he doesn't know what to do. He's in a quandary because going to war is a money problem and a personnel problem. We don't have enough soldiers. We need more, and that's because we've been fighting these wars on the cheap over the years. Instead of using a lot of troops, we've had these special forces, 10, 20 guys we send them in, get them out, and they'll do the job quickly. And look at all the money we save by not having so many soldiers. And wars cost money, and we're $18 trillion in debt. We're going to go big-time debt if we have to expand the war effort. But you have to do what you have to do. There are think tank people in Washington. He's got to talk to more people. You can never say never about anything. And one thing I've learned in life, there is always a way. And I've got to assume the president has the people around him or has the capacity to find the people to help him come up with the way to do what should be done. In the meantime, ISIS is getting stronger. I fear, and I agree with Senator Lindsey Graham here. I'm not a Republican. I generally don't pay any attention to McCain and Graham, but I think he's right here. They're going to come here. It's inevitable. They're in France now. They may go back to England, and boom, the Atlantic Ocean isn't going to protect us here. And what are we going to do? Are we going to wait till they do come, and we're going to see bloody babies on American streets, our babies, our children? It's going to happen. We've got to do something, and that's why I'm unhappy with Obama. Which brings me now to Hillary Clinton. I'm having a great anti-democratic night. This is amazing. I never talk anti-democratic to this extent. I'm upset with Hillary, all right, with her Wall Street excuses and situation. She was asked in the Democratic debate Saturday night, how could she explain why she was supported by Wall Street big time? Look at all the dollars she's already taken in from Wall Street. Now, there's no question she supports Wall Street. She was the United States Senator from New York. Of course she's got to support Wall Street. She did during her terms there. She and her husband now are playing around with big dollars all over the world, okay? That involves banks. So she should have said yes in answer to the question. I am supported by Wall Street, and say, but look, I'm supported by everyone. She's got tons of little organizations that support her and give her big money. But no, she tried to. This is what her problem is. This has been her problem. It's going back all the way to Little Rock when she and her husband were first under attack. She doesn't admit up to things. She tries to bluff, not actually lie, but slime her way around an issue. The truth is better. It resolves the problem, gets it out of the way. Her excuse was why she supports them. I was senator on 9/11. I was there on Wall Street, and the banks are part of Wall Street, the financial district. I saw how bad they were hurt. I helped them come back, and I'm proud of it. Okay? Well, that's bullshit. All right? The banks didn't have to come back. They weren't hurt by 9/11. In fact, the banks The same ones that support her, the same Wall Street people, are the people that gave us the 2008 mortgage debacle, put us into a recession. Millions of people have lost their homes in this country. She's got to learn to speak directly and truthfully. Now, it just came out this week also, interestingly, that thus far, Wall Street, the financial district, the banks have given her $3.5 million. I'm talking about 6 banks have given her $3.5 million so far, and it's early. We haven't even reached the actual campaign. But who are they? Citicorp, Goldman Sachs gave us 2008, DLA Piper, J.P. Morgan Chase, they gave us 2008, and Morgan Stanley. Who else? They gave us 2008. She's got to straighten out the way she talks. She can't be glib. She can't be smart. It'll go on for a little while, but it's not going to last. People are going to start talking like me, I'm afraid. And I think she could be commander-in-chief. I think she's qualified to be commander-in-chief. But she's got to face up to certain things, and the next president cannot play favorites with Wall Street. This is what really bothers me. Let's go to the immigration problem. We're going to Germany. Now, it's a hell of a problem over in Europe. I don't have to tell you. Angela Merkel, I don't like Angela Merkel. I don't seem to like anyone tonight. I have never liked Angela Merkel. I think she's a hard ass. I think she crucified Greece. I think she's worse than Margaret Thatcher ever was. She's certainly tougher than Margaret Thatcher was. And here's her situation. She knows there are millions of people coming out of Syria. Within the last month, she says, we've already taken, I don't know how many 100,000 people here in Germany from Syria, and we're going to take another 600,000, 700,000, another million something over the next year. 1 week after she made that statement, only 1 week later, she, in effect, stopped taking people. Too many people, we got to work this out somehow. She spoke before she thought the situation out. They're getting buried over there in Europe. Well, what are you going to do? A member of Parliament got up this week, and he suggested we got to have 1 year compulsory service by university graduates. Now, what did he mean? He said that university graduates must give 1 year to social services work or 1 year to the military. Okay? This is forced service because this is the only way we're going to control the migrant problem. The way the situation exists now, the German people, the social workers who are dealing with and taking care of the immigrants are, and I quote, at the limit of their exhaustion. Well, it's compulsory labor. Social services, military service for a year. And obviously, within hours, it was very unpopular in Germany. Let me share with you some of the things that are happening that are showing you how the immigrants are a totally disruptive force. I don't have to tell you, the numbers are so large. But, as a practical matter with the little things, all right? Right now in Germany, school children are being forced by their teachers on a daily basis to clean up the trash left by the immigrants the day before. Yes, kids in school, you're going to go out, you got a half hour here, clean up. The parents are extremely unhappy. Some of the German schools have been ordering their girls not to wear short skirts or shorts. And the reason why? It's offensive to the Muslims. You should not dress that way. It's offensive to the Muslims. What the hell? This is Germany. This isn't Syria, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. And you might also provoke assaults upon yourselves by the Muslim immigrants, okay? There's a terrible problem over there. They don't like women, the Muslims. Last week I reported that the hospitals were having a problem. The Muslims were refusing to receive medical care and attention from female nurses and female doctors because it just don't go with their religion, I guess. And now they don't want the kids who are already in school to dress the way they are because it's against the good book. Another problem is that It's already been decided that in Germany that in order to educate the Muslim children, because you got to educate these kids, you just can't leave them in a camp someplace. The educational standards of Germany will have to fall. They will have to be less in order for these kids to get into school. Now let's move over to Sweden and the immigration problem. Sweden and the immigration problem. The Prime Minister of Sweden, by the way, Sweden's was one of the sweetest countries in the world up to 10 years ago. They were socialistic. People paid big taxes, but they worried about nothing. Everything was kumbaya in Sweden. Everyone loved everyone. And when the Muslims started moving in to Europe, a lot of them went to Sweden. North Africans especially went to Sweden because it was a welcoming country. You went on welfare in effect right away. They took good care of you. Well, the Prime Minister of Sweden said last week, he said, and I quote, "In the long run, our system will collapse." You heard me. In the long run, our system will collapse. He says, "This open-door situation cannot continue. We have taken in 190,000 immigrants this year. We expect another 140,000 to 150,000 next year. We cannot handle it. We are approaching our limit." Interesting, isn't it? This week, my column in Conk Life, I decided to do a change of pace. I've been doing some heavy columns recently, and I thought maybe my readers of the newspaper column would like a break, and I also wanted a break. Sometimes, I get tired of writing heavy things, and I try to go light. Well, I think I went light this week. I talked about sex. By the way, the newspaper hits the stands tomorrow. The title of my column this week is Sex Tales of Old. Sex Tales of Old. Just to give you some examples of what's in it. Julius Caesar. Remember Marcus Brutus? Et te, Brute, Shakespeare wrote. Et te, Brute, when Brutus stabbed Caesar on the Ides of March. And no one could really understand why Brutus stabbed Caesar. Brutus and Caesar were very good friends. Very good friends. In fact, Caesar was like Brutus's mentor. Well, there's a background to it that we're not told, or we don't learn. Brutus's mother, her name was Servilia Scipionis. Servilia was Caesar's mistress for 20 years, from 64 BC to 44 BC. While he was married, while he had Cleopatra, and he was a ladies' man, he probably had a few others, but Servilia was his mistress. Mistresses apparently were A-OK. They were tolerated by the wife. So she was a big woman in the Roman court. She had a lot of power. And Caesar was very fond of her for many years. But over a period of 20 years, his fervor for her waned. He was growing distant. She feared she was going to lose the relationship with him. She was going to lose the power this gave her in Rome. So she went to Caesar and she said, "Look, take my youngest daughter, Julia Tertia, and you now have a relationship with her. Make my daughter your mistress." Well, he declined. He turned her down. I don't know for what reason, good or bad. So now she hated him. Servilia hated Caesar. She is a woman scorned. And if you read history, you will find that Servilia, a woman, led she instigated, she spoke for, "Let's kill Caesar, he's hurting Rome." She was the one who led these people, the senators. She didn't put a knife in him. Her son did it for her. She even convinced Brutus. And that's the story of Caesar, how his girlfriend, he pissed her off, and she was the force in getting him assassinated. Let me talk to you quickly about Christopher Columbus. Not the nice guy we always thought he was. This is a learning thing. He was not a nice man. It's going to shock you when I tell you this. I share with you what I've discovered. He sold 9- and 10-year-old girls into sexual slavery, the natives on the islands in the New World. He sold slaves. Almost immediately, he was gathering the people who lived on the islands and shipping them back to the New World. A big time he was into slavery. He said, and I quote, "Let us in the name of the Holy Trinity," they always do things in the name of God, "let us in the name of the Holy Trinity go on sending all the slaves that can be sold." He also said about the 9 and 10-year-old girls that he was selling into slavery, "There are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 are now in demand." These quotes directly from a diary that is still in existence, Columbus's diary. He was involved with genocide. The island of Haiti, when he first got there, had 250,000 inhabitants. 3 years later, there were only 50,000, all right? Now, Columbus's men, his crew, and he was aware of this, they would cut off the legs of children to see how sharp their swords were. They would take wagers amongst themselves. They would bet amongst themselves to see who could cut a person in half with one stroke, okay? They raped any woman or child, female child that walked by. They killed people. They were cruel. Of course, Queen Isabella and her husband in Spain, they didn't care because he was bringing wealth back from the New World, and he was bringing slaves, which meant money to them. That's Columbus's story. Let's talk about Ben Franklin. He's a little bit lighter here in this whole thing. Ben Franklin was a big flirt. Never married, a bachelor to the day he died. But he was a big flirt. He liked his lady. So, he is rumored, I read this is cute, he was rumored to truly have been the father of our country because of all the children he sired. He particularly liked older women when he was young, and when he got older, he would recommend to young men that they should dilly-dally with older women, and the reasons why, and they're interesting. He said older women are more knowledgeable, they're good conversationalists. There's no need for safe sex. Older women have already gone through menopause. Also, older women are easily gratified because they don't have to have it as often. You don't have to keep, working at it. And the sin is less because the women have already had sex. And an older woman's life cannot be ruined, and God is more forgiving. He loved harlots. There was no internet in those days, so people could get together for sex, but there were what we call gentlemen's clubs. His club was the Brotherhood of St. Francis of Wycombe, also known as the Hellfire. The Hellfire Club. It met 2 times a month, and it had a weekly convention in the summer. The schedule for these meetings were orgies, rituals, wrenching, and drinking. He also had the largest collection of porn in existence in those days. Franklin was a printer in his early years, and he still had, to the day he died, the porno sets that a printer uses to print. Which brings me now, this is one of the last ones. I've got several people in the story. Betsy Ross, and she's really a surprise. The woman, we believe, made the first American flag. Well, let me tell you something. There is no historian that will tell you Betsy Ross made the first American flag, that George Washington came to her shop in Philadelphia and said, "Make me a flag," and she did. No one knew about Betsy Ross until 100 years later, in 1876, when they were planning a centennial, 100-year centennial of our country. Someone said, "Hey, the flag, where'd it come from?" I don't know. Someone piped up and said, "Betsy Ross." And everybody said, "Okay, Betsy Ross." They did a whole display on Betsy Ross, her shop, etc. And this whole story came to being. And now it's woven into the fabric of the history of the United States. Everybody believes Betsy Ross made the American flag. She had nothing to do with it. She wasn't even a seamstress. She was an upholsterer. Now, let me tell you what she did do for this country, all right? She did exist, but she didn't make the American flag. I'm telling you, you can't find an historian that'll back it up. There was a Colonel Carl Van Donop, D-O-N-O-P. He was a Hessian colonel. You remember the Battle of Trenton, George Washington standing at the front of the boat, and they went across the Delaware, and I think it was Christmas Eve, but it was the middle of some cold, wintry night. His soldiers are barefoot. They've got very little arms, but they surprised the Hessians, and they defeated them at the Battle of Trenton. The Hessians were there fighting for the British. Well, Von Dopp, the colonel, was in bed the night before with Betsy Ross. She was a beautiful young widow and was known to, she was prolific. And he decided, instead of getting out of his bed, because he had reinforcements that had to be delivered to Trenton that night, he said, it can wait till tomorrow morning. I'm having a good time. Betsy's here with me. So he and Betsy had a great night. Had Von Dopp arrived with the reinforcements, he would have gotten there before Washington did, and we probably would have lost the Battle of Trenton, okay? Now, Betsy Ross did have an upholstery shop. She had young ladies working for her, okay? They were prostitutes. She was, in effect, pimping them out. She was the madam. The girls would go with the British and Hessian soldiers. She provided a service with them, though. They would get information from the soldiers about what was happening. They would report it back to Betsy Ross, and she, in turn, would go tell the colonial troops. Interesting, isn't it? I want to go now. That's some of the stuff that's in the story. I think it's an interesting story. It's a good change of pace. Saudi Arabia. You know, they have taken advantage of our country for I don't know how many years, 50, 60, 70 years. Both Bushes let them do it, Bush 1 and Bush 2. And it was because they had the oil, okay? And we needed oil all these years. This is the way I look at Saudi Arabia. They gave us $4 a gallon gasoline. Our friends, our good friends, gave us $4 a gallon gasoline. They also, I believe, gave us 9/11. 17 of the 21 perpetrators of 9/11 were citizens of Saudi Arabia. Now, an investigation has been made who was involved in Saudi Arabia. 38 pages have not been disclosed of that report. The 38 pages that have to do with the participation of Saudi Arabia in 9/11. And to this day, no one knows what's in that stuff because the government won't disclose it. Having said all that, the Saudis know that their reputation right now in this country, it's taken a beating. You know, we got enough gas now. We don't need them. We don't need anybody. Fracking has helped us. And they're not making as much money as they did in Saudi Arabia. It's a different ball game today. They got to kiss our ass. We don't have to kiss their ass. We had to kiss their ass more than they have to kiss ours now, though. But Saudi Arabia knows that the American people are not happy with them. They know that you got to understand. They're one of the worst Muslim countries in the world. They have, this year, thus far, more beheadings. They do when they condemn you to death, they chop your head off. They've had more beheadings than last year, which was their biggest year. They're way ahead of it already. They don't treat females correctly. They hang people. They do crucifixions. What's more interesting is they're on one side in Yemen and we're on the other. We're fighting on opposite sides or supporting opposite sides. We're supporting opposite sides in Syria. So what have they done? They've gone out and hired very good and very expensive lobbyists, public relations, and law firms in Washington anew to improve their reputation with the American people. That, my friends, is the show for this week. I hope you have enjoyed. Come back and share with me these things again next week. This column is archived, as you know, and most of you read the archived portion of it. I find that very interesting. On Blog Talk Radio and YouTube, and as of tomorrow morning, will be linked to my Key West Lou website. I wrote a book that sounds like what I talk about here, that reads that way. It's called The World Upside Down. You can get it on Amazon.com. If you'd like the show, buy my book. Thank you again for joining me. I look forward to being with you again next week.